Focus. I don't know what any of this is. For 1 hour. Cool. So, Filippo's the Leftcurv here again. Today we're talking about LP. I tried to make this video yesterday, and that didn't work out in my favor because of me and bad timing. Today we're talking about liquidity provisions, also known as liquidity pools or liquidity providing. And looking over the video yesterday, which I don't often do, I realized I kind of made some mistakes. So let's try not to make those today. So yeah, LP stands for usually liquidity pool, liquidity provision, liquidity providing. It stands for a few things because, English language, which is why I put it or something along those lines. And let's just get into it. So first we're going to start with AMMs. So an AMM stands for automated market maker. These are DEXs like Uniswap or PancakeSwap. You can go on DeFi Llama and check all the DEXs. I think Uniswap's one of the biggest ones. But depending on which chain you're on, you're going to find different stuff on Solana versus ETH versus, Bitcoin, quote-unquote, layer 2s. And all the other chains, Avalanche and all that, Phantom, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, basically, these are just exchanges, decentralized exchanges, where you can swap tokens. And how does it do it? It does fancy math to create markets for trading tokens. That's basically what you have to know. So how do they work? Basically, there's a number two. The second point is liquidity provider or liquidity pool. So usually, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm just reading the screen and not thinking. Let's try this again. So people go on to these DEXs and they provide their assets and put them into these liquidity pools, and then you're able to go through those pools and trade your tokens. So in this example I wrote down, I have ETH represented by X, and this is a multiplication sign, and then USDC represented by Y equals K, number of tokens. This is the fancy math. It is more complex than this. I'm not great at math. I'm not going to try and explain it to you. If you really want to know, search something else, because this video is not for that. But basically, think of it like this. There's two buckets, usually. Each bucket contains one type of each token. So in one bucket, there's ETH. One bucket, there's USDC. But these are in a pool. So these buckets are almost in a big bucket. A lot of buckets. And if you have ETH, that means you can go into this pool, swap ETH for USDC. It uses the fancy math, makes sure the constant, I think, which is represented by K, stays the same. And then there's like sliding curve stuff and then fancy math that happens. But say you want to go on to Uniswap and you want to go, right now I'm on ETH mainnet. So say I want to buy $1,000 worth of ETH and I have $1,000 worth of USDC. I would put $1,000 in here, search for ETH, and then you only get 997 ETH because of something called slippage, which is basically the amount of liquidity in the pool. So therefore, there's a price impact. So you putting money into these pools affects the price of the tokens, which is kind of how they maintain their ratios and prices and stuff, I think. And you can adjust slippage based on speeds and da-da-da. Some chains are better than others, yeah. You pay a fee. This is kind of what we're going to be talking about later. And you also pay the gas fees for the network costs, which on ETH mainnet are also obviously high, which makes sense, versus like a layer 2 where it's going to be like sub 1 cent, usually, maybe like a few cents. Or if you're on Solana, something around the same. I don't often use Solana, so I know it's cheap, whatever. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things you could do. So all these different things, these are all different liquidity pools you can go in. So say you want to buy Pepe. There might not be a USDC Pepe pool, but I think how it works then is that it will convert to another pool like USDC ETH. And if there's the ETH Pepe pool, then it will do like multiple transfers, right? So see there's the ETH Pepe pool here. And if you buy $1,000 of it, you're going to move the Pepe price by almost 8%. So yeah, these are all different tokens and stuff you can buy, all with different amounts of liquidity in them. And like you can even see the pools here actually. So for ETH, these are all the pools that you have for ETH. This thing TVL stands for total value locked, even though it's not locked. But you can see the higher the TVL, the less slippage you're going to get, because there's just more. It's like there's a way bigger bucket. So think of your trade as like a splash in the bucket. At the bigger pool, you're going to have a smaller splash, versus a smaller pool, you're going to make like a big wave. That's my analogy. All right, back to this. Oh, this is Pancake Swap. This is a rabbit, I think. Cool. Just another DEX, right? So same but different. Some of these things you can do time weighted average price. So I think you just can buy in or buy out over a course of time, in limit orders, which is super nice when they work. All great stuff. You can choose whatever chain you want. So Pancake Swap is on all these chains. Uniswap is on all the L1 and all these layer 2s, also on Avalanche and some other layer 1s and stuff too. What else we got going on? So yeah, it's kind of how LPs work. So people put their money into these buckets, and then moving on to the next point, risk reward. So why do you put your money into LP? Funny enough, I think the majority of people putting money into LP actually lose money on average. I think that's just the stats. But yeah, basically you're doing this to earn fees. So, but before we get into that, let's go through each thing in from left to right, because, that's how we read things where I live. So first risk, smart contract risk. So obviously if you're deploying anything into a smart contract, there's smart contract risk. I represented the smart contract by this contract thing I got here on Canva for free with this brain. Looks like an academic, represents smart contract. You get it. And then there's other thing called impermanent loss, which would probably be its own video to explain what it is. But basically, think of it like this. Impermanent loss is, so say you're holding ETH and USDC individually outside of a smart contract LP pool. So you just have this in your wallet. Obviously, your USDC should stay the same price, usually. But your ETH is going to fluctuate in price. So say ETH is at $1,000. Let's just do this live. Cool. So say you have ETH equals 1,000, and then 10 days later, right? So we're going in today. Say 10 days later, ETH equals 1,500, right? So impermanent loss would mean that if you just held that ETH in your wallet and you had one ETH, you'd have $1,500. But because you have an LP pool, you're not gonna have $1,000. You're gonna have less than that because it's locked in the smart contract, and it's basically trying to balance in this pool. So instead of having that $1,500, you might have, you probably have less because it's a stable pool. This is taking too much time. Impermanent loss is basically losses you suffer when your tokens are inside of a smart contract in an LP pool on a DEX. Usually is what it refers to as. But we can go through this in another video. So that's risk reward. That's the reward fees. So every time somebody swaps through Uniswap or Pancake Swap, you see this right here, fees, 0.25%, right? So you have to pay to swap. And who are you paying those fees to? Well, obviously gas gets burned if it's on mainnet. That's not getting paid to anybody. It's going to get paid to ETH holders as a whole to keep ETH kind of stabilized or deflationary. And the fee actually gets paid to the LP providers. So that's why you put your money into these pools. So say you have 10,000 worth of Bitcoin and ETH and you put it into this pool. If the volumes are high, then the fees are going to be relatively high too, right? Because all that volume, you're getting a portion of that, and it's getting paid out to you. So you're getting paid these fees, right? So it's actually like a way to make real yield once there's actually trade volume happening, which is always occurring on crypto, and I think we always will for a decent amount of time, right? So that's the risk reward. The reward is you're getting paid fees. Your fees are, you're trying to outdo the impermanent loss once you don't realize it, but you're trying to basically make more money in fees than you are suffering an impermanent loss, which for a lot of the old contracts is pretty hard to do. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. Your fees should outweigh your impermanent loss. And if you're holding two volatile tokens like an ETH or a Bitcoin together in a pool, like say this example, let's just go over here, is here, right? And this is Bitcoin, right? Both of these can go up in price. So your overall position will increase. You're not going to get necessarily as much in, it should probably be green. Let's delete that. Click. Shazam. So these can go up in price together, right? And once that happens, your overall position will also go up. It gets tricky when one doesn't go up, stays flat, and then one might shoot up higher. Then your position's obviously going to change. And that's where the impermanent loss comes in. Hope that makes sense. Okay. So yeah, risk reward, smart contract, permanent loss, fees. Hope that makes sense. CLP. So this is actually, it requires its own video. You'll find a lot better videos than me explaining, but I will probably make a video of CLP, or concentrated liquidity providing, or provisions, or provider, or whatever. But basically all it is that you're doing the same thing. You're putting two tokens into a pool, but instead of saying use these tokens to trade at whatever price, so say ETH is, the prices are basically, I need to stop doing that. Let's just do this. Click, copy, paste, go over to the side. So, right? So say the ETH price, in a regular pool, like the ones we're talking about up here, that aren't concentrated liquidity, you're providing your liquidity from the price of 0 to infinity. But in a constant liquidity position, you're providing your tokens in a fixed range. So say ETH is right now around like 3,500 as the filming of this video. Say you want to provide liquidity in this ETH USDC pool, you can choose to provide liquidity to ETH USDC from a price of say 3,000 to 5,000, and that increases something called capital efficiency, and you're going to earn more fees once ETH is bouncing around these price ranges compared to something like this pool where you're not going to earn as many fees because your liquidity is being used within these ranges. And the difference between these two is that if it drops out of this range, you can suffer some pretty big impermanent loss on the downside, and you can also go out of this range on the upside. Again, this requires its own video, but just know that this exists, and we don't need to get into it today. But that's the basics of it. These pools, 0 to infinity for this stuff, concentrated liquidity, you choose the price that you want to provide ETH into, and then you'd have to rebalance it later. Probably a little bit more advanced than we need to be. So CLP is more confusing, more room for error, higher risk reward, fancy degen glory, and it needs its own video like I said before. But yeah, that's LP. You're basically providing liquidity on dexes so people can trade, getting paid fees and hoping you make money, but most people don't. And if you do CLP, you're kind of doing the same thing, but you have a little bit more fine tuning and you can actually make more money doing CLP. I do some CLP. I'm just learning about it now. Not great at it, but I'm getting better. And it's hard to kind of wrap your head around. So again, I'll make it its own video. So Shazam. This Canva feature is pretty sweet. I like Canva Draw. I think it's like a keynote they had. It's pretty cringe. Doesn't matter. Anyways, this video's over. Thanks for watching. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, then maybe I'll make another video. Let me know in the comments. But I hope it helps somebody. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching Leftcurv and all that stuff. Bye.